Hello, I am Jake Collins, and this is Knightmare Series 5, Episode 5, which was first broadcast on the 4th of October 1991. We're with Sarah, Helen, Keely, and William in this episode, the only team of Series 5, in addition to the winning team, to reach level 3. Which in some ways is a pretty impressive performance. But of course the trouble with this team is that it's one of those teams with a totalitarian advisor, like I was talking about with Leo. Helen, in this case, is the dictator of the team, and she does manage to come up with some good guiding and advising during the 3-level quest, but I do think she'd feel happier in many ways if Keely and William weren't there with her. Or perhaps she wouldn't feel happier because she kind of likes bossing them around, being the head of the team. She certainly likes squashing William. Anything William says, and to be fair, he does say some weird and stupid things at times, Helen will jump down his throat, be all over him, assert her authority over him, and kind of make him look rather small. Keely kind of goes the opposite way by acquiescing completely to Helen's totalitarian regime. Keely says very little, and at one point when Helen asks her for input, Keely does this kind of face and shrug like, well, I don't know, you're the one who makes all the decisions, Helen. And I'm quite happy with that situation. So perhaps Helen has chosen her two accomplices pretty well. One to squash and make herself look strong, and the other to be quiet and acquiesce, so that her authority is never in doubt, one way or the other. Even when spellcasting, or certainly dispelling anyway, Keely isn't without Helen's input. Helen has to point at the letters. These teams where one advisor just does everything, takes control of everything, they're not that good to watch, I find. And really, there's not a lot of good teamwork, or any teamwork really, in evidence, and they're never likely to be in a position to come anywhere close to winning. Although, as I say, level 3 in this series, only one of 2 teams to get to level 3, as well as Ben's winning team, can't be ignored. Quite impressive stuff, but on the whole, not very good teamwork, and it does get rather awkward to watch at times. This is the debut of Elita. Hugo Myatt really enjoyed Stephanie Hest's performance here. I don't think he was expecting her to be quite so over the top with her insults and her berating ways. But she certainly throws herself into the role completely, and I think Hugo enjoys it a lot. Elita's certainly a very striking part of any scene she's in. We're going to get a Smirkanov flight sequence here, of course, another very striking new aspect to Series 5. And like the eye shield sequences, I do think they waste a bit too much screen time in Series 5 with these flight sequences. They're pared down a bit for Series 6, which is a good idea. Same thing happens to the eye shield sequences, just so that we're not hogging too much screen time with pre-recorded footage. But as a concept, as a visually stunning new aspect of Knightmare, I do like the Smirkanov fights. I liked them at the time. It works very well with the puppet and the helicopter footage. It's satisfying to watch as long as we don't have to sit through too much of it. This particular Smirkanov sequence is a circle. The helicopter flies around in a big circuit and comes back to the same castle it's taken off from. And Helen, because she is rather observant, actually spots this, and you're not supposed to. You can hear her saying, during all this pre-recorded footage that they're supposed to fill in, telling Sarah what's going on, it's almost like you're going round in a circle, and then coming to the castle. I think you're coming up from the other side. Yes, you're right, Helen. But really, you weren't supposed to spot that. The viewers weren't supposed to spot that. Smirkanov is supposed to have flown Sarah to a different castle, the threshold of level 2. Way back in the mists of time when I was making little practical quests for Rosie in our childhood home. She was being the Dungeoneer and I was playing all the Knightmare characters. I used to do the transition from level 1 to level 2 by being Smirkanov. I would stand on the front step, get Rosie to give me her fare, and then I would lead her, flapping my wings all the time, of course, down the driveway, along the pavement, up through the back access, into the back garden, and I would land on the lawn, and then either the back door to the kitchen or the French windows to the top of the living room would be the entrance to level 2. And I know at least once I gave Rosie the key to those French windows as a clue object, which was rather fun. But little did I realise there that I was actually recreating this sequence from the show. I thought, aha, yeah, this is a good cheat. Do a kind of circle, leave from the front door, come round via the back passage, and the back door is another location, except it's actually the same building. It's still our house. I hadn't worked out at the time that was exactly what this Smirkanov sequence did. Take off from this castle, go round in a big circle, approach it from a different direction, and it's a different castle, dramatically. It fooled me. I didn't know I was doing it myself with my own recreation, but it never fooled Helen. This level 2 clue room shows up a problem with watching this team. There's a lot of discussion and dithering. It was the same in the level 1 clue area. They took ages to decide on their items. Didn't listen to Traegard and Pickle talking about the arrow, and so didn't end up taking that, and that got them into some trouble. I think perhaps they've learned here to listen more carefully to Traegard and Pickle when they're saying things like a Knightmaster. This is the most obscure scroll clue ever. Take 1 step forward, 2 steps right. What on earth does that refer to? Well, of course, it's describing the knight's move from chess, and it's telling them to take the little statue of the knight. The problem is, of course, it doesn't look like a chess piece in the absence of the rest of the chess set. It just looks like a statue of a knight. Helen wants to take it to prove that we're good. It could be like a token. Yeah, because the arrow was the token that you missed. You don't want to miss another token, do you? It is the right thing to take, the statue, but it's not really a token. It's a missing chess piece that they're going to give back to Brother Mace very soon. But it's not obvious that it's a chess piece. If the knight had a horse, it would be more obvious. So I'm not surprised they don't pick up on the fact that this is a very intricately carved chess piece, that it relates to take one step forward, two steps right, the clue, and that when Pickle's saying a knight master, he's trying to get them to match all that up together. But after a lot of discussion, they do end up taking the right things this time anyway, the gold and the knight. It does kind of show up their eventual downfall, this a lot of discussion and indecision and possibly not quite reaching the right decision in a timely manner, because it's dithering about giving the red gem to Elita on level 3 that's going to do for them in the end. And all 3 clue rooms that they do along the way do kind of portend that final bit of dithery discussion that really is their downfall. Always nice to have a scene with Michael Huell as Brother Mace. He's being very obscure in this scene. And I'm not surprised Helen wants to check with him at the end. Do you want us to have a look for the key? I only say this. Without the key, you will not progress very much further, my dear young lady. What Brother Mace is really telling them here is you've got to get the key to Merlin's magic box from Sylvester Hands. He does it through the medium of talking about chess pieces. It's a strange old scene, but Michael Huell brings it to life very well, as always. Of course, it's here that Brother Mace tells us Merlin is no longer with us. And when I was first watching this back in 1991, I thought, ah, dear, that confirms it. John Woodnut as Merlin has left the show. I never, ever thought that would happen. I thought they would always find a way to include Merlin, even if it was a bit weird and underwhelming. It still led to some rather good scenes, like when he was wearing his sackcloth robe and doing strange things in Series 4. I remember when I was watching Series 2, and particularly 3, at the ages of 5 and 6. I thought, that's what they're doing with Merlin this series. This is an interesting new thing to do with Merlin, this 3 steps business. Then getting into Series 4, what are they doing with Merlin here? Some strange stuff, but I do want to see him as much as possible, of course. And as we came further and further into Series 5, and people were getting onto level 2 and not meeting Merlin, I had to come to accept that, no, he's gone. He's not in it anymore. And Brother Mace saying there, Merlin is no longer with us, made me think, oh yeah, that means he's no longer here with us in the dungeon. He's left the show. It didn't occur to me that it might mean he has died. And indeed, perhaps I didn't really consider the concept that Merlin could die in the same way as a normal human. There are lots of different interpretations of his exact nature in legend and film and book all over the place. But perhaps it did plant a certain seed in some Knightmare fans' minds that Brother Mace was saying there, Merlin has died since Series 4. Some of his spells are still around, but he was always leaving things lying around. Silly old fool. Speaking ill of the departed there, Brother Mace. This is rather a fun scene, the first of 4 appearances of Sir Hugh de Witless, Mark Knight's in-dungeon character in this series. I think the best thing they managed to do with him is with Alex, where he actually plays an active role in helping the quest, being summoned by the hero spell, as I mentioned on my previous commentary. In this appearance here with Sarah, and really with Ben, and also with Kelly at the end of the series, he's just kind of filling in some time and being amusing, and he does a very good job of that, Mark Knight. But he doesn't play a big role in the quest as a whole. What struck me straight off about this appearance of Sir Hugh, after I'd seen the whole of Series 5 and I was watching it back on video, his first appearance here is the only one where he is alone with the Dungeoneer. In his other 3 appearances, there's another character there, and Sir Hugh is mainly interacting with the other character. That's Gwendolyn with Ben, Skarkill with Alex, and Sylvester Hands with Kelly. So it's a unique scene here, a Dungeoneer having a lengthy conversation with Sir Hugh. And he's kind of being a hindrance to the quest. A well-meaning hazard, as Treguard describes him. It is a very good description of him in this scene. So Hugh implies that he could actually bring an end to the quest here. He's going to rescue Sarah and take her all the way back where she came from. How does she feel about that? Well, of course she doesn't want that, because that's rescuing her right out of the game, isn't it? So they have to persuade him not to do that. An interesting piece of antagonism here, really. Hindrance to the quest. It's very polite, very well-meaning, as Treguard says. Very full of chivalry and gallantry, but of course being under this enchantment, he's got rather a one-track mind about wanting to rescue Sarah, which is at direct odds with carrying on with the quest. But it's quite nice the escort instead. I wouldn't mind an escort for a little way. And he agrees to that, kind of plays into his mindset. Works pretty well. And here we have Lord Fear's appearance in this episode. It's not one of the 3 episodes in Knightmare's second half, including 2 in Series 5, that Lord Fear doesn't appear in. But it is one of the episodes where Lord Fear isn't in the cast at the end. And there's another one of those in this series in which Lord Fear does appear, but his name isn't in the cast. With Alex, as I was mentioning. When I first saw the full-length closing credits and read the casts on Challenge, they'd been recorded over when I got these off CITV, I was very surprised that they credited Sir Hugh de Witless instead of Lord Fear. But it's a good idea, isn't it? Because then it makes it clear who has played whom, to put in the names of as many characters as possible into those closing credits. They never credit Arwok at all. They never credit Rothbury over Lord Fear. But those couple of times, they've done it with Sir Hugh de Witless. And he certainly does play a much larger role in the episode than Lord Fear does. And he's very satisfied to be able to say that, I told you you'd need rescuing, and he's going to stay there and skin a few goblins while Sarah makes her escape. It seems Sir Hugh is going to buy Sarah just enough time to do this scene with Sylvester Hands. And what a scene with Sylvester Hands it is. Really, I think it's Sylvester Hand's best scene. When I used to watch this back on video in the early days of having it, late 91, early 92, I used to think, well, Paul Valentine still hasn't quite got Sylvester Hands here, has he? He hasn't quite got the voice, he hasn't quite got the manner. But what I hadn't realised was he has got the original voice, manner, intention of Sylvester Hands. And then from his next appearance in Ben's Quest, really, he gets completely dumbed down, turned into a stupid oaf, complete joke, let's laugh at him character. In his early appearances, and particularly this specific appearance with Sarah, there's a lot more to Sylvester Hands. Yes, he's dirty, he's disgusting. That base to his character is always there. But he's not really stupid. He's not a figure of fun here. He's shrewd. He's creepy. He's kind of leering at Sarah, saying things in a way that might make her feel rather uncomfortable. Ever so cheap, Sarah, 'cause it's you, and things like that. It's a much more interesting interpretation of the character of Sylvester Hands than we'll ever see again. There's a certain shrewdness and level of distrust here. Put your gold on the table, put your key on the table. A kind of tentative exchange of goods in a rather creepy, deliberately awkward way. And the scene works very well like that. When he picks up a bit of Sarah's hair and sniffs it and so on, it's rather creepy, rather disturbing. Perhaps it was decided that that was going a bit far. But really, Paul Valentine brings this version of Sylvester Hands to life so well, and it really is a very satisfying version of Sylvester Hands. It's interesting. It makes a good scene, a good exchange, which achieves its goals of being uncomfortable, tentative deal going on. And they end up achieving what they need to achieve with it, of course, swapping the gold for the key to Merlin's magic box. So in many ways, that's my favourite Sylvester Hands scene. I've always realised, since I was 8, that it is rather an anomalous Sylvester Hands scene. But it's only since looking back over the show as a whole and growing to think about and appreciate these things through adult eyes that I've really realised that not only is it anomalous, it's also better than the direction they take the character in from his next appearance onwards. And for the second episode in a row, we pause just as the team are about to complete a causeway, or attempt to complete a causeway. And they're well set to make it to level 3 in the next episode, aren't they, with the key to Merlin's magic box? How are they going to do there? Well, if we've seen their dithering and drawn-out discussion in the clue room so far, we may get the sense that they might not make it quite all the way. Thanks for listening to this commentary. Hopefully you'll join me again next time as I turn my attention to Knightmare Series 6, Episode 6.